My girlfriend's wealthy parents disliked me long before they ever met me. On my first visit to their mansion, I stopped on a quiet country road to help an elderly woman whose vintage Rolls-Royce had broken down. By the time I arrived, I was an hour late and covered in grease, completely unfit to meet them. Then, the woman I had just helped pulled in right behind me. Before we get into the story, here's a question for you. What's the most stressful meet the parents moment you've ever experienced or heard of? Share it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Now, let's get back to that lonely road. The phone call with my girlfriend Sophia was supposed to calm my nerves. Instead, it only made me more anxious. I stood in my small apartment, already sweating in my only suit, while her tense voice whispered through the receiver. "Okay, Mark, remember the plan," she said. "When my father asks what you do, don't say you own a garage. Tell him you work in specialized automotive management. And if my mother asks about your hands, say you've been doing woodworking. Whatever happens, don't mention engine oil or transmission fluid." "Sophia, honey," I said, trying to joke it off. "I'm a mechanic. That's who I am. I built my business from scratch. I'm proud of it." "I know," she said, softly, her voice full of worry. "And I'm proud of you. But they're different. They live in another world. They won't understand. Please, Mark, just for tonight, play the part." I sighed. I'd do anything for Sophia, even pretend to be someone else, to impress her sophisticated, judgmental parents, Richard and Eleanor Prescott. I hadn't met them, but I'd heard enough stories, their country club memberships, their charity galas, and their silent but absolute disdain for anyone who didn't fit their old money image. I was everything they looked down on, a working-class man with grease under his fingernails that no amount of scrubbing could erase. I spent 10 minutes scouring my hands with a stiff brush until they were raw. Then I got into my spotless vintage pickup truck, the one I'd restored myself, and began the long drive out of the city and into their world. The scenery changed quickly. Busy streets gave way to quiet suburbs, then to endless green hills and horse farms. Soon, massive gates and long driveways appeared, each leading to palatial estates. I checked my watch. For once, I was actually early. But just as I began to relax, I saw it. A car pulled over on the side of the road. And not just any car. A gleaming, two-toned Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud from the 1960s, its hood open, smoke curling upward. Standing beside it was an elderly woman dressed impeccably in tweed and pearls, looking helpless and frustrated. My instincts kicked in. A voice in my head, Sophia's voice, warned, "Don't stop. You can't be late today." But another voice, my own, overruled it. I sighed, pulled over, and stepped out, leaving my jacket behind. "Having some trouble, ma'am?" I asked gently. She studied me, my clean shirt and nervous smile, with a sharp but curious gaze. "It just stopped," she said in a refined, steady voice. "Made a dreadful noise and started smoking. My driver was following me, but he's gone missing." "Mind if I take a look?" I asked. "I know a bit about these older engines." She hesitated, then nodded. "Be my guest." I lifted the hood and inhaled the familiar scent of hot oil and metal. Within 30 seconds, I spotted the issue, a frayed wire on the distributor cap. "A simple fix, if you knew what you were doing." "Just a loose wire," I said. "I can fix it in 20 minutes. But I'll get a little dirty." She smiled slightly. "If you can bring this car back to life, young man, I don't care if you end up covered in mud." I fetched my small toolkit from the truck and got to work. As I repaired the wire, we talked. She didn't ask about my job, background, only about the car. She clearly loved it and knew a lot about it. When I finished, I wiped my hands and said, "Try it now." She turned the key, and the engine purred smoothly to life. Her face lit up with genuine joy. "You're a miracle worker," she exclaimed. "How can I ever thank you?" "Just happy to see her running again," I replied, smiling. She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes kind and intelligent, before driving away with a graceful wave. I watched her disappear, feeling good about having helped until I looked at my watch. I was now over an hour late. My hands were streaked with black grease, my shirt stained. The sun was already setting as I reached the Prescott estate. My excuse, helping a stranger fix her car, sounded ridiculous even to me. These were people who valued appearances above everything, and I was about to show up looking like I'd crawled out of a repair shop. The entrance was marked by massive stone pillars and a long gravel driveway winding through a manicured landscape. The mansion itself was grand and glowing, every window lit like a cruise ship. I parked my old pickup at the far edge of the circular drive, surrounded by sleek luxury cars. For a moment, I just sat there, my heart racing. I tried to wipe the grease from my hands with a napkin, but it only made things worse. Finally, I took a deep breath, stepped out, and walked up to the towering front doors. The bell echoed somewhere deep inside. After a long moment, the door opened, and there was Sophia, staring at me in horror. "Mark," she whispered, eyes wide. "What happened to you? Are you okay? I tried calling you." "I'm so sorry, Soph," I began. There was an elderly woman on the road. Her car broke down, and before I could finish, two figures appeared behind her, Richard and Eleanor Prescott. They looked exactly as Sophia had described, elegant, cold, and impossibly polished. Richard's voice cut the air like a knife. "I'm terribly sorry for being late, Mr. and Mrs. Prescott," I said quickly, my words tripping over themselves. There was a woman on the side of the road. Her car had broken down, and I couldn't just leave her there. Richard raised a hand, silencing me instantly. "We don't care for excuses, young man," he said sharply. "In our world, punctuality isn't a courtesy. It's a sign of respect, and clearly, that's something you lack." Eleanor stepped forward, her posture flawless, her expression cool and cutting. Her eyes swept over my grease-stained hands and wrinkled clothes. "Sophia told us you worked with your hands," she said sweetly, her tone full of venom. "I see you've decided not to hide it. How quaint." I stood frozen, humiliated. Every word I'd practiced vanished from my mind. Richard turned to his daughter, dismissing me as if I were invisible. "Perhaps, Sophia, we should reschedule this visit," he said. "Maybe for a time when your private friend can present himself with a touch dignity." Then he turned away, a final gesture of rejection that stung more than any insult. I felt a hollow ache in my chest. I'd tried to be polite, respectful, to play their game, but I'd still failed miserably. I looked at Sophia one last time, silently apologizing for not being the man her parents wanted me to be. Then I turned to leave, ready to retreat into the night. But before I could take a single step, a familiar sound echoed across the estate. The deep, smooth rumble of a Rolls-Royce engine. Its powerful headlights swept across the perfectly trimmed lawn, bathing us in light. My heart stopped. I knew that sound. I knew that car. The same two-tone silver cloud I'd fixed earlier glided up the driveway and stopped behind my truck. For a moment, no one moved. Richard and Eleanor stared, clearly annoyed at the interruption. Sophia's face shifted from despair to confusion and then to cautious hope. The chauffeur stepped out, opened the rear door, and a delicate, ring-adorned emerged first. Then the elderly woman I had helped earlier stepped out with regal composure. The porch light fell on her perfectly styled hair and confident smile. Eleanor gasped, her voice rising in disbelief. "Mother, what are you doing here? And in that old car? I told you to use the town car." The woman, now clearly Sophia's grandmother, ignored her daughter completely. Her sharp blue eyes swept over the four of us. The rigid stance of Richard, the guilty look on Eleanor's face, Sophia's worried expression, and finally, me. She started up the steps with brisk, purposeful strides. The air itself seemed to tighten around her presence. Even Richard and Eleanor, moments ago full of authority, seemed to shrink under her gaze. The woman, Matilda Prescott, the matriarch of the entire family, stopped in front of me. Her eyes studied me from head to toe. The grease, the dirt, the rumpled suit. But her expression wasn't one of disgust. It was curiosity. Then, slowly, a small smile curved her heart. "Respect, Richard," she said firmly, her clear voice cutting through the silence. "Eleanor." Her tone was sharp and commanding. "This young man, the one you were about to send away, spent over an hour on the side of the road fixing my car after your supposedly reliable driver got himself lost." Richard blinked, his confidence faltering. "Mother, we didn't know. He arrived an hour late, and he's a mess." Matilda raised an eyebrow, her expression cool but amused. "A mess?" she repeated. "No, Richard. This is the mark of a man who works hard. A man who helps strangers without expecting anything in return. Something, I might add, this family could use a bit more of." Eleanor flushed, her eyes darting to the ground. Matilda turned to her daughter, her voice sharp but calm. "Character, Eleanor. True character. Something money cannot buy, and something this young man has shown in abundance tonight." Then she faced me again. Her smile, "You have skill, and, more importantly, kindness. Come along, Mark. I arrived just in time to save you from what was sure to be a painfully dull evening. You'll join me for dinner." And with that, she took my arm. Her gesture was deliberate, a public declaration of approval. I was too stunned to speak as she led me into the mansion. The same house where, moments before, I'd been unwelcome. As we entered the grand foyer, I could feel Richard and Eleanor following behind us. Their silence, heavy and resentful. Sophia trailed beside them, her expression a mix of shock, pride, and barely hidden laughter. The butler, an elegant, gray-haired man named Henderson, stood waiting. His professional expression wavered slightly when he saw my state. But at Matilda's presence, he quickly composed himself. "Welcome home, Mrs. Prescott," he said with a bow. "Thank you, Henderson," she replied briskly. "Please set another place at the table, to my right." The butler hesitated, just a fraction. Everyone knew the seat to Matilda's right was a position of honor, but then nodded and hurried off. Behind me, I could practically feel Richard's glare, burning holes in my back. Matilda walked me into a grand dining room, a hall so vast and elegant it looked like a scene from a movie. The table was long enough to seat 20, though only 5 of us would dine that night. She guided me to the chair beside her, her honored guest. For a moment, I felt like an imposter who had somehow wandered into a royal banquet by mistake. Yet Matilda's calm confidence grounded me. The dinner that followed turned out to be one of the strangest and most unforgettable nights of my life. It wasn't just a meal, it was a masterful performance, and Matilda was clearly in control of every scene. Dinner began in absolute silence. The only sounds were the faint clinking of silverware and the soft crackle of a distant fireplace. The tension at the table was almost physical. You could feel it pressing against your chest. Richard sat across from me, his jaw tight. Eleanor sipped her wine with forced calm, though her eyes flicked toward me like daggers. Sophia sat beside her grandmother, looking both proud and terrified that Matilda had taken my side. Matilda, on the other hand, looked perfectly at ease. She dabbed her mouth with her napkin, then turned to me with a gracious smile. "So, Mark," she began, her voice carrying across the table with the authority of someone used to being heard. "Tell me more about your work. You said you own a garage, yes?" I froze, glancing at Sophia. She shot me a panicked look, the exact conversation she'd warned me about. I remembered her plea. Don't tell them you're a mechanic. Call it automotive management. But after the night I'd had, and after the way her parents had treated me, I wasn't about to pretend anymore. I straightened my shoulders. "Yes, ma'am," I said clearly. "I run a small auto repair shop downtown. Started it 6 years ago. We handle everything from classic restorations to modern diagnostics. It's not fancy, but I take pride in doing honest work." A faint smile touched Matilda's lips. "Honest work," she repeated softly. A rare phrase these days. Richard gave a short, derisive laugh. "I see," he said, cutting his steak with surgical precision. "So, you fix cars. That's admirable, I suppose. But it's not much of a living, is it? You must work with your hands more than your head." Before I could respond, Matilda turned toward her son-in-law. "And yet, Richard," she said evenly, "without men like him, you'd be walking to your precious golf club." The air went still. Even the butler seemed to pause mid-step. Richard's face flushed, but he said nothing. Matilda's eyes stayed locked on him, calm but commanding, until he finally looked away. She turned back to me. "I happen to have a fondness for automobiles," she said conversationally. "My late husband restored a Bentley when we newly married. He always said a good mechanic was both an engineer and an artist." "That's exactly how I see it," I said, grateful for the lifeline. "Restoration is about precision, but also respect for the craftsmanship, the history, the soul of the machine." Her eyes brightened. "Well said. Machines do have souls, in a way. They remember the hands that cared for them." Sophia smiled, relief softening her face. For the first time all evening, I felt the tension begin to ease. Then, of course, Richard couldn't resist. "Tell me, Mark," he said, smoothly, his tone pretending to be polite, but his eyes sharp. "Do you see yourself fixing cars forever? Or is this just a stepping stone to something more stable?" I met his gaze, steady and calm. "It's not a stepping stone, sir. It's my career. I built my business from the ground up. I employ 3 people, pay them well, and have loyal customers who trust me. Stability isn't just about money. It's about integrity." For a moment, No one spoke. Matilda smiled faintly into her wine glass. Eleanor's expression stiffened, as if she'd tasted something bitter. Matilda finally set her fork down. "You remind me of my husband," she said softly. "He built everything we had from nothing. People like Richard's family looked down on him too, once. Funny, isn't it? How quickly people forget their beginnings once they've climbed high enough." Eleanor's lips parted in protest. "Mother," but Matilda held up a hand. "No, Eleanor. Let the young man finish." I hesitated, not wanting to push my luck. But Matilda's gaze was encouraging, almost challenging. "I've never minded working hard," I said finally. "But I do mind being treated like I don't belong. I don't care about fancy dinners or family legacies. I just care about how people treat each other when no one's watching." The room was quiet again. But this time, it was different. Richard didn't have a comeback. Eleanor looked away, and Sophia reached under the table. Squeeze. When dessert arrived, the atmosphere had changed completely. Matilda kept the conversation light, steering it toward travel, art, and old cars. I even made her laugh once, something that clearly shocked Richard. By the end of the meal, I'd relaxed enough to almost enjoy myself. As the plates were cleared, Matilda turned to me and said, "Mark, after dinner, I'd like to show you something. I think you'll appreciate it." Sophia shot me a curious glance, but Matilda only smiled mysteriously. "You'll see," she said. After coffee, she rose with surprising energy for her age and motioned for me to follow. We left the dining room, our footsteps echoing through the marble hall. I felt Richard's glare on my back the whole way. Matilda led me down a long corridor lined with paintings, through a set of French doors, and out into a large, dimly lit garage. What I saw there stopped me cold. Rows of classic cars, immaculate gleaming, and perfectly restored, lined the space like a private. Jaguars, Bentleys, a pristine Aston Martin DB5. The air smelled faintly of leather and motor oil. Matilda watched my stunned expression and smiled. "My husband's collection," she said proudly. "I keep them all in working order, though it's been difficult finding someone who truly knows how to handle them." She turned to me, eyes glinting with amusement. "Until today." For a long moment, I just stood there, speechless. The sight before me was breathtaking. Each car looked like it had just rolled off the line, chrome polished to a mirror, paint so deep it seemed to glow under the soft lights. "You maintain all these?" I asked quietly. Matilda chuckled. "Goodness, no. I have them serviced, but most of the mechanics I've hired over the years were, how should I say it, more interested in polishing than preserving. They didn't understand what these machines need." I walked slowly past a deep green Jaguar E-Type, my fingers hovering just above the gleaming hood. "They're alive," I murmur to myself. You can't just replace parts and call it restoration. You have to listen to the car. When I looked up, Matilda was watching me with a knowing smile. "You speak like a man who belongs here," she said. I laughed softly. "I wish I did, but I'm afraid your son-in-law would rather see me parked out by the gate." Her smile widened. "Oh, don't concern yourself with Richard. He's still learning that wealth doesn't make one wise." Then, with a thoughtful pause, she added, "Tell me something, Mark. Have you ever restored a Bentley R-Type Continental?" My eyebrows lifted. Never had the chance, I said honestly. That's a dream project, but I've studied every blueprint I could find. I could practically take one apart in my sleep. Good, she said simply. Then she turned and pointed toward the far end of the garage. Under a dust cover sat a long, elegant shape. Because I have one, and it's been waiting for the right hand's favorite, but it hasn't run in over a decade. I've been searching for someone who could bring it back to life, someone who'd understand what it meant to him. I swallowed hard. Mrs. Prescott, I'd be honored. Her expression softened. Please, call me Matilda, and I'll hold you to that promise. At that moment, Sophia appeared in the doorway, still in her evening dress, her expression half nervous, half proud. Grandmother, what are you two scheming about? Matilda smiled. Scheming? Just sharing our appreciation for fine engineering. Sophia walked over, eyes widening as she took in the collection. I didn't even know all these cars were still here, she said. Dad always said they were just old junk. Matilda gave a short, amused laugh. That's because your father has no soul for beauty. He sees value only in what he can show off. Then she turned back to me. Mark, you'll come by next week, won't you? I'll have the car ready for from behind us, cold and sharp. That won't be necessary. We turned to see him standing in the doorway, his expression dark. He must have followed Sophia down. His eyes flicked between me and his mother-in-law, full of restrained anger. Mother, I think you've made your point tonight. This display isn't appropriate. We hardly know this man. That tells me everything. Richard's voice tightened. And you intend to invite him back? Into our home? Into our family's affairs? In my garage, Matilda corrected smoothly. And possibly into the family, if Sophia has any sense. Sophia blushed, but there was pride in her eyes too. Richard opened his mouth to argue, but one look from Matilda silenced him. The authority in her gaze was absolute. Richard, she said quietly, but firmly, you will not embarrass yourself further. You've spent your life managing numbers and appearances. This young man fixes things, real things. You'd do well to learn from that. He stood rigid for a moment, then turned on his heel and left without another word. The silence he left behind felt oddly freeing. Matilda sighed, then looked back at me. Don't let him bother you. Mark, some men mistake arrogance for strength. But I've seen what real strength looks like. Sophia stepped closer, her voice soft. You were amazing tonight, she whispered. I've never seen anyone stand up to my father like that, except her. She smiled toward Matilda. The old woman chuckled. Well, my dear, it seems you've chosen wisely. A man who fixes engines and stands his ground, that's rare. Then she looked at me again, her tone warm but deliberate. Come by on Sunday. We'll start with the Bentley. I have a feeling this is the beginning of something interesting. As we left the garage, I glanced back one last time. Dim light, waiting. For the first time that evening, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I belonged in this world after all. Outside, the night was calm. Sophia slipped her hand into mine. You didn't just survive tonight, she said quietly. You won her over. I smiled. Yeah, but something tells me your father won't forget this anytime soon. Sophia laughed softly. Good. He needs a little humbling. We drove away under the stars. my old pickup rumbling down the long driveway. I glanced in the rearview mirror and caught a last glimpse of the Prescott mansion, its lights fading behind the trees, but one window still glowing, Matilda's. And though I couldn't be sure, I thought I saw her silhouette standing there, watching us go, with the faintest smile of approval. Sunday arrived crisp and clear. I woke early, nervous but excited. The thought of working on a Bentley R-Type Continental, Matilda Prescott's prized car, felt almost unreal. I loaded everything twice and drove toward the Prescott estate with a strange mix of anticipation and calm. When I arrived, Henderson, the butler, met me at the gate. This time, his tone was polite, even respectful. "Mrs. Prescott is expecting you, Mr. O'Connell," he said. "She's in the garage." I smiled. "Thank you, Henderson." Inside, Matilda was already waiting. She'd traded her elegant dinner attire for a cream-colored cardigan and a silk scarf tied neatly around her neck. The Bentley stood uncovered now, a vision of timeless design, its silver curves gleaming softly under the morning light. "You're punctual," she said approvingly. "That's a good start. Wouldn't dare keep you waiting." I replied with a grin. She laughed, a short, genuine laugh that filled the wide space. "I like you, Mark. You treat people the way you treat machines, with patience and respect. That's rarer than you think." Together, we began inspecting the car. She handed me tools, intently, as I explained each part of the process. For hours, we worked side by side, two unlikely partners, bound by a shared love of craftsmanship. As I adjusted the timing belt, she spoke quietly. "You know, my husband used to say the same thing you did, that cars remember the hands that cared for them. He built our first fortune, fixing engines for people who thought he wasn't good enough to dine with them." I looked up, surprised. "He was a mechanic? A brilliant one," she said proudly. "But when the business took off, people suddenly called him a visionary instead. Funny how titles change once the money arrives."